Oh boy, Johnny Somali. I love talking about Johnny Somali. So many videos have been made talking about him, but now, finally, it might actually be over. So at the minute, he is looking up to 46 entire consecutive years in prison. We've already talked about this before, you know, just a blatant disrespect for citizens, numerous laws in the country. Honestly, IRL kick streaming is the gift that just keeps on giving. But instead of nice gifts like, oh, thank you for the $5. Oh, I really appreciate that. They just act like idiots that fill up the trough with even more slop. And at the minute, I can't think of a creator that has got into trouble with the authorities on live more than Johnny Somali. Okay, maybe Vitali, but that's a different video, okay? I've already made one on him. Leave him alone. All he did was steal someone's hat. He's a nice guy. So Johnny Somali and Vitali at the minute are incredibly similar. They basically both show up to foreign countries and they walk around and think, what if I just act like a complete annoying degenerate and commit like, you know, just borderline felonies? That's hilarious. It's this kind of new wave of clip farmers where they just go into the streets and think, if I'm really annoying and I annoy a bunch of people, they're going to get angry at me and then I'm going to get more viewers on my stream. I mean, just to give you a quick example of what Johnny Somali's been up to, you know, just in case you've been in a coma for the past 6 months, while riding a train during one of his IRL Japan streams, he starts harassing a random Japanese guy, asking him how he knows about Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Now, do I have to explain what Nagasaki and Hiroshima were? That's the two places that had nuclear bombs dropped on them during World War II. And then Johnny just keeps doing this hilarious thing where he's yelling the names of people and just pointing at people, and then blames the people on the train for bombings, telling them how they don't know how to behave, which is the biggest irony imaginable coming from him, by the way.
We destroy it because you don't know how to behave. Wallahi billahi wa tallahi. I swear to God. You do again, we're gonna do again. You understand?
And also just shouting racial slurs. This all built up to a point when an American actually confronted Johnny and he just completely folded in half.
What? What do you mean?
Where are you from?
You know where I'm from?
Where are you from?
I'm from America.
You're from America?
Yes.
So am I.
You're from America?
Yeah, you're being obnoxious.
You know what we do to you?
What do you do?
We will do again.
Do what?
Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Do you think I'm Japanese?
Where are you from?
I'm from America.
Where are you from? What's your ethnicity?
Texas, buddy.
Now, even though Somali is facing his own charges, you might remember someone actually got involved and they had a bit of a physical altercation. Dalkun Yu was a former Navy UDT, which is pretty much the South Korean equivalent of the Navy SEALs, and he rose to fame after taking out Johnny Somali with a single punch. I can't show it because YouTube will remove it in a heartbeat, but oh my, was it a punch. And then asked in an interview why he chose to one-punch man Johnny Somali, he basically just said, and I quote, "I just did what I had to do as a Korean citizen." Now, I don't ever promote physical violence, but to be fair, in that case, he was kind of asking for it. A lot of these IRL streamers, not all of them, by the way, I don't want to say it again, I've made this argument before, you go out with a camera, that doesn't inherently make you a bad person. If anything, IRL streamers are more targeted by other people, but there are a few select of these IRL streamers that just go around, they try to be as much of a nuisance as possible, and unless you're Jack Doherty with his, you know, 6'11" bodyguard, people are probably going to start fighting back against you at some point. I mean, one of the biggest streamers in the world right now, iShareSpeed, he does IRL streaming, but he's not like morally bankrupt like these other people. Sure, he can be a nuisance, he can annoy like some boomers, but it's nowhere near the extent that these streamers are doing to basically incite a negative reaction just for the sake of content. I mean, Speed's been doing his world tour thing, for example, his China streams. I do want to point out, I love how dystopian our current society is, that we're using e-celebs who became famous in the past 3 years to fix Chinese-American relations. China! Now, the problem is with assault, whether you genuinely think they're a bad person or not, it's still assault, and that is a crime. So you, who punched Johnny Somali, ended up getting a fine of 10 million Korean won, which sounds like an absurd amount of money. Has he got to mortgage his house? Does he have to win the lottery? Oh no, you do the conversion. It's about $7,000 or 5,000 British pounds. Well, you know, bloody what? It's like 4 TV licenses, that is. It's still a lot of money, but it's not 10 million, don't worry. Now, one really nice resolution to this was another YouTuber actually got involved, but in a good way. Donut Operator. He heard about the fine that this Korean Navy guy had to pay and basically paid the fine out of his own pocket. Now, the original charges that were brought against Johnny Somali was apparently possession of deep-faked So Johnny actually created AI-generated images of a Korean streamer called Bong Bong and put her face onto... And this actually broke South Korea's special act of violence crimes, which was passed, actually unlucky for him, in 2024. So this brings with it a 3-year prison sentence or a 30 million won fine, and that's a lot more, being around £16,000 or 22,000 burger dollars. But what makes it worse is Johnny was profiting off this as well. So this could bump up his prison sentence from anywhere to 7 to 10.5 years. But the crimes don't stop there, because Johnny was caught doing the exact same stuff again, this time making more fake deep of another Korean streamer. Now, the strange thing about this is we don't actually know who this is, and Somali actually hasn't pled guilty to either of these charges, but that means he could be facing up to 21 years in prison from these 2 crimes alone. Also, I want to say we have new merch. I pretend there is a merch print on this chest here. We got caps, tees, hoodies, all available down below. Just had a restock. Please get your credit card now. And the list of offenses don't end there, because Johnny actually got charged with 3 counts of obstruction of a business. So once for disrupting and threatening people while inside a 7-Eleven. A second time was a completely different instance where he was playing loud music on a public transport. And finally, for his actions as an IRL streamer at Lotte World. I know you say it Lotte World. I don't care. I've just gave up saying things properly anymore. Now, these 3 carry with them a maximum of 5 years in prison. So then, by doing the math, that's 15 years total, because each crime was 5 years. And then adding the charges already against him, we're now up to 36 years in prison. And then there were some other crimes as well, like minor, small crimes, which held 30 days in prison, all of which Johnny has actually pled guilty to. So the biggest update on Johnny Somali is from another YouTuber called Legal Mindset. He's another one of those lawyer channels, way more smarter than me or you put together. And the update he gives, it could actually be the end of Johnny Somali. And I'm sure every commentary channel will be crying themselves to sleep, because he's probably a bigger cash cow than when everyone was doing 50,000 Mr. Beast videos in a row. So we were looking at 36 years in prison, but now with these additional charges, it could be bumped up to 46. Meaning that if Johnny Somali was, let's say for example, he was sentenced today, right now, he would not be walking free out of jail until the year 2071, and he would be aged 70 years old. Now, there was also a lot more other things that Johnny Somali got involved in, some little stints that he wasn't actually charged for by the legal system. For example, when he was, harassing people in Japan, he actually moved to another country to stop Japanese authorities from pursuing him and apprehending him. That is, of course, unless South Korea then extradite him back to Japan. But now the South Korean government have actually got some new leads and evidence, which has prompted them to reopen the investigation against Johnny. Now, Legal Mindset, who has made Johnny Somali a bit of his pet project recently, has said that the South Korean authorities often do actually push back on complaints and try to get people to not actually put out complaints. Whether that's because they want to cut down possible fraudulent cases, or if people have to go through the hassle of fighting their own side where they know that there just isn't really enough evidence to support their case, they'd probably be less likely to submit it, or because they could just be a bit lazy and not want to do their jobs. I'm not sure the reasoning behind this being a popular thing, but according to these documents, there's actually a new complaint against Johnny Somali that was submitted, and that had little to no pushback. They looked into the complaint, they looked into the evidence submitted, and they said, yeah, sure, we'll take it. Which, again, isn't really a great look for Johnny, because I'm sure, word of mouth has spread throughout the entire police department over there. Everyone that works in law enforcement probably is aware of who he is at this point. So Johnny is actually being investigated for breaking the Child Welfare Act. This is under Article 17, and it goes into detail about some pretty bad stuff. Having a child engage in acts or arranging such acts, or committing harassment or against a child that may make him or her feel ashamed, committing physical abuse against a child that may hurt his or her body or injure his or her physical health and development, and committing emotional against a child that may injure his or her mental health and development. Now, this was actually brought against Johnny Somali pretty initially, and it was one of the first charges that the Korean government actually looked into, but at the time they decided there wasn't really enough evidence here, and they dropped the case. But with the new evidence that's apparently been submitted, they have enough evidence to try to at least take on this case again. There's actually a specific article under the Child Welfare Act in the Korean government, and this comes with a penalty of around 10 years in prison, or a fine that goes up to but not exceeding 50 million won, which is 27,000 British pounds or $36,000. Now, it's believed that these charges actually stemmed from an IRL stream he did. This was back in September. He was at a theme park in Seoul called Lotte World. Now, this is the 10th most visited theme park in all of Asia, and it's primarily directed towards children. There was even one blogger that said, often referred to by Americans as Korean Disneyland, Lotte World Adventure is a theme park right in the heart of Seoul, and while it has no affiliation with Disney, it definitely gives off Disney vibes. Now, whilst waiting in the queue, as many IRL streamers do, he had TTS on. And obviously, when you're out in public and you've got a degenerate fan base, the TTSs, they're going to be pretty brutal. Because obviously the entire point is you're at home typing funny words, filling out mommy's credit card, and the streamer has to be subjected to whatever you type in public. Now, this went on for a long time. The donations were playing out loud. Staff were actually trying to reason with him and translating what they were saying into English, but nothing really stopped him. He didn't care. Now, the problem with these texts, apart from the actual messages, was the fact that they were purposely sent in Korean, so anyone around Johnny would be able to instantly understand what they were saying. Now, the TTS ranged from, complimenting Johnny Somali to insulting people in the queue, but the two that stood out, and they really stood out, is this short phrase that was repeated, so on purpose, everyone around him could hear. So you can see now why the Korean authorities really wanted to push the Child Welfare Act onto Johnny. Because, I mean, in the stream, you can literally see, like, there are kids waiting in line next to him, and they're almost trapped with him, being forced to hear this text-to-speech. Now, Johnny did actually get chased down and kicked out for the stunt, but it's only until recently that it's actually being used in law against him. So the TLDR is, Johnny Somali, his career might be over, it might be so over, but at the same time, nothing ever happens.